Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke, and it is now the 14th of February. Some people think of it as Valentine's Day. I think of it as Lupercalia, the Roman festival, having to do with the wolves that supposedly raised Romulus and Remus. And Sam is on already. Good morning. Glad to see you on, because I know we'll be chatting after this live stream too. So yeah, this is here we are. It's 7:30. It's a very good day here. It's very bright. It's very sunny. It is cold out. Apparently there was a lot of wind last night because Joanne, good morning. Alex, good morning. Because I went outside and I happened to find that had and Kathleen, good morning. Happy day. Happy Valentine's Day. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was just saying how I tend to think of it as Lupercalia, which probably the more romantic or sexualized aspects of Valentine's Day tend to be connected to the Roman Lupercalia, which had some really interesting traditions associated with it, shall we say. So we will see. But I find myself thinking of wolves probably because, I don't know, we've been having some conversations around that with regard to symbolism and so forth recently. So I was thinking, oh yeah, it's Wolves Day, Lupercalia. So, happy commercialization of our day is what Joanne is saying. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, they're like Christmas and everything else. There's definitely the capitalistic component to all of that. I haven't, my mother always buys candy and stuff. And my sister said, oh yeah, she bought a whole bunch. And I forgot last time I was at her house to bring it back. So, it's fine. I mean, it's not, I haven't bought anything for anybody this year. There's some people I used to send cards to and stuff, but I was just like, kind of what's the point, I don't necessarily need a lot of chocolate, and most people I know are like, yeah, we don't necessarily want a lot of this right now either. Everybody's still recovered from the winter season, whatever they've celebrated. There always tends to be a lot of chocolate around that period of time. So for me, it's like I don't dislike chocolate, but I don't tend to keep it around. It's not the first thing that I would eat, and generally I don't want a lot of it. So anyway, yes, welcome to all of you. And this is, okay, so interesting start to the day. I woke up this morning and I had some dreams the night before. And it's interesting because a lot of you have been in my dream workshops, and one of the things that we had talked about was their dreams that people might have around, and this is weird, but around toilets, bathrooms, that kind of stuff. Good morning, Alistair. Good to see you. So things that are around that kind of stuff, right? Which I know is kind of a weird, gross theme for Valentine's Day, right? But the thing is, I had a dream about somebody, and I'm not going to say who, but kind of this idea of somebody who's being like what do they call it, the prophetess or the priestess of the loo, of the toilets, first connecting it to Avalonia and then saying no, not Avalonia, Avonia, okay, which are two different words. And good morning, Suda. And Kathleen says, stop, that's me. Yeah, well, you're not alone in that. And I think we've all had a dream like that at some point. And certainly there was a dream where I know that people have had, there was another one where somebody had a dream of a house, and it was like, but there was like a kind of a gutter, or a kind of a place kind of out back that was all filled with rubbish. And it wasn't, happy Valentine's Day, thank you. A place that was all filled with rubbish. And they were talking about like, well, how come nobody has cleaned this out? It's a place where there's supposed to be water running, but it was all full of junk. And it was like, well, the house is beautiful, but this rubbish has to be cleaned out, which, some of the symbolism of that seems quite evident. But when I had that dream, I was thinking, okay, like Avalon I associate with Glastonbury in England, because and Glastonbury has this kind of reputation. It's like this, it's supposed to be at the very heart chakra of the earth. And I like Glastonbury, don't get me wrong. I've been there a number of times. I have a friend there who I will usually stay with, my friend Michelle, when I'm usually in Glastonbury. But if I had choices of places to go in England, that wouldn't be my first choice. Glastonbury is, I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, they have the two wells there. They have the red well and they have the white well. So it's, so they have, the different springs that you can go to, and you can get the water from the street, from usually right near Chilkwell Street. There's this. So, so we have this kind of thing. And so Glastonbury kind of has this reputation. There's the idea that this is connected to King Arthur's Avalon. Okay, so it's often referred to as Avalon, or I know there's books out there, Glastonbury, maybe it was J.on Fortune who wrote Glastonbury, the Avalon of the Heart, right? But Avalon, but I don't know, Glastonbury itself, I'm kind of like, it's, hello. It's, I don't know, Glastonbury to me, I feel like the locals kind of like to keep to themselves, and they're not necessarily as fond of outsiders, even though I can't say I've had a bad experience with that in Glastonbury. I know other people who have, even other people from England. So I don't know. So, but the thing in the dream is it said not Avalonia, but rather Avon. Okay, I've heard from folk around that it's a bit overrated. That's a good word for it, Alex. I mean, and again, I don't want to insult anybody from Glastonbury. I do have friends there. They might say the same thing to you. I don't find it a terribly convenient spot in a lot of ways for things, and I've spent a lot of time there. But if you're not somebody who lives there, it's I don't know. It can be a little inconvenient at times to get around and to do things. And yeah, there's only so much there. Depends on what you want to be there for. So in any case, I have a friend. I have a friend who is, I wouldn't call her a pagan exactly, but maybe she is. She's very esoteric, deep into esoteric practice, who thinks she's like, it's a bunch of shit. I don't believe any of that in Glastonbury. I was like, okay, I mean, that was her viewpoint on it as well. That, everybody goes there and it's not the place. But I mean, and I agree with her that there are a lot of other places in England that are very, very deeply attached to that. But Avon is the word for river. It's like a Celtic word for river. And so it's not that you're the person interpreting from Avalon, but from Avon, from the rivers, right? Now, I was thinking, okay, that to me has to do a lot with catonic rivers, right? That which runs underneath, these currents that run underneath. And it's interesting in these spaces how oftentimes, like holy wells and sacred spaces and things like that, you find them in the weirdest places, hairdresser shops, coffee shops. It's like, oh yeah, the well's down in the basement. Like they just build right over them. And there's a real, if you know where to find them, there's a real hidden, like the real sacredness is hidden really deep in those depths there. But there's probably a psychological component to that as well, because it's like, this is where, when we talk about alchemy, it's kind of like digging around in the quote unquote crap of things is where the gold is hidden. That's what's transmuted into the gold. Like that's the alchemical process. And even Carl Jung talks a lot about this as well in his books on that cover the subject of alchemy. So yeah, I mean, and that connects in also with thinking about Tantra. Tantra, for anybody who's new to the idea of Tantra, a lot of times people associate it with like sex. It's always in this culture associated with sex and sex magic and things like that. Or if you're in India, sometimes there's a talk of, the tantric who practices black magic or something like that. Really, the definition of the word Tantra, it's the word for weaving. And what it is it's the idea that the ordinary, plain, day-to-day stuff, both what we consider to be aesthetically beautiful and what we consider to be revolting, if we think about yesterday's discussion about the uncanny and so forth, or about things that aesthetically make us uncomfortable, that's all woven in. That's all part of the life experience. So when I talk about being somebody who embraces Tantra, what I mean is that you don't have to be living like, oh, I only eat organic foods and I meditate every day for hours and I only purify myself with this. Like the idea of trying to be a totally pure being is something I'm very much against. I'm like, no, because that's not what you are. You are a being that is a mixture of things. And part of the split that we have inside of ourselves between good and bad, good and evil, right and wrong, what's acceptable and not acceptable. A lot of this has to do with this idea of what's pure, or what we consider to be sanitized in some way. And reality is not sanitized, and then it's just kind of, we get very phobic about things that make us uncomfortable, or these kinds of experiences. But these are all part of what it means to be alive. And when you think about the idea in a dream of a house with kind of a things, or somebody spending time in the toilets and so forth, it's kind of like you're talking about all the stuff that the crap that nobody wants to look at. It's like, ew, it's disgusting. It's germ ridden, keep it away, that kind of a thing. But really, that's the material, at least psychologically, if you want to use it as a metaphor, that you need to sort through. That is the material that you need to sort through in order to be able to achieve something like wholeness. Wholeness requires, and when I say that, I don't mean, sometimes people interpret that as meaning, oh, well, I should engage in as much bad behavior as good behavior. Like, we tend to look at it as I have a little bit on this side, so I've also got to do a little bit on this side. And that's not what any of this means. It's this idea that it's a flow. And again, we're back to our Leminskit sign, right? Our little number 8, that's sideways, our infinity loop. That loop is more about the way life flows. It's kind of like, okay, it flows down and then it flows up, and then it flows down and it flows up. And your experiences are going to be varied. If you go out every day and the only way you can have a good day is to only have good experiences every single day, then you are not, then it's going to be really, really hard. You're not, there's a sense of not really being able to see life for what it is. We're not always going to be in a situation where we are fully accepted for who we are, or where we're going to always be understood by people, or where everything that we would like to happen will happen in the order that we want it to happen, right? So this doesn't always happen. To be able to flow with life is to say, whatever comes, we deal with whatever comes. And which is why you stay in the present, you stay in your center, you stay in the present. And as you move through, there's going to be a whole variety of experiences happening around you. Some you're going to find pleasurable and enjoy, and they're going to make you happy. And other ones are not. They're not going to. And you don't want to be attached to either one for too long. When we get too attached to experiences that make us happy, then what happens is, when the feeling runs out, it's like it's almost like a drug. You got to find something to I need to get that feeling back again. I want to feel it as strongly as I did in the other. And so, yeah. So anyway, that's that's kind of the whole thing about flowing with life, is that we flow with whatever's going on, good and bad. And you deal with something just by staying in the moment that you are. But I think the whole imagery around that, I was just like, wow. And it's interesting. I think, I think Kathleen jumped in and said something about the dream. She's like, oh my God, that's me. Okay. People who have 12th house earth signs, 12th house Virgo in particular. And that was another thing that we had been discussing in one of the classes. Okay. And I think actually Kathleen does have that as well. 12th house Virgo. 12th house Virgo. Okay. We one of the things we had talked about, I think it was in the class on the nodes, we had mentioned the fact that this is we're on the Pisces Virgo nodes right now. Pisces is the north node and Virgo is the south node. Okay. And south node, Virgo, it tends to be associated with the details of things, with perfectionism. So if it shows up in the house of the soul, which is the 12th house, there's always this worry that somehow you're not doing it right or not doing it good enough. Like, that was one thing that was discussed, at least in that class, about the possibility of a 12th house Virgo. Now, the thing is, but after I had that dream, I said, you know what? I think 12th house Virgo means something else as well. I think that's the soil, that's the fertile ground. And when we think about soil, okay, soil is dirty, right? And it's a mixture of things. When they grow crops, what do? You put manure down. There's if you're out here by the farms, it absolutely stinks when they put all that stuff down. You just walk out and you go, oh, it's that time of year again. But But there's this idea that's the richness of the soil. That's the thing from which everything that is good grows, from where our abundance comes from. It comes out of that stuff that we consider to be, ew, gross and dirty and so forth. So I think when we dream about that kind of stuff, it's kind of like we're confronting that which we've kind of, and that tends to be part of what we talk about as shadow. At least it's something that's in shadow, because that's the thing that we put over here and we hide and we don't want people to see. We were talking about Heimlich and Unheimlich yesterday, right? The idea of concealing something that people should not see. And that is the thing that we often don't want to show or share with people. And, and I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to go out and share that kind of stuff with people. But the point is that you need to at least be aware of it for yourself. You need to see where it is, and you need to look at it without shame and without judgment, because you need to see what this raw material is. Certainly one of the things we talk about in energetic healing is the way, like we talk about the violet flame, for example. There's this way in which you take the things that maybe we perceive as toxic or infectious or germ-ridden in our lives. And again, I'm talking figuratively, not literally. The stuff that blocks our heart, the stuff that makes us unable to trust ourselves and to trust others. The kind of collective silt of all our experiences that kind of builds up. Anybody who's done the Rouhani healing with me knows this. It's like, you have an initial burst through that's like, oh yeah, this is great. But then it's like, you have the moments where the memories come in of certain things, and then the tears come in or the anger comes in, because it's like you're working through the crap. You're working through all of that. That's why I often tell people with Rouhani, if you're not ready to do that kind of work, then, start with Reiki, because Reiki has a little bit of a gentler inflow. I mean, there are people who can have those experiences with Reiki as well. I mean, I've had clients who have told me about, Reiki bringing this massive heart opening, and that can happen. It's not that it doesn't, but Rouhani just tends to get like right to the point. It's just like, okay, yeah. Oh, you have a heart block? Look here. It's all of these things that you haven't wanted to think about and look about in a long time. And Sudha says, yeah, Rouhani is great both ways. Well, right, exactly. It's opening, but it's also going to go through all of that crap. And the question is, how ready are we to do that? I feel like people who say to me like, no, I have to have Rouhani and not Reiki, are people who you probably are ready, whether they feel that they're totally ready or not. But it is kind of this fast track kind of experience that really, it works towards the heart opening. But you also have to remember too, that as we have more experiences, we could weigh ourselves down again. So it's important to remember that these things are going to go on in the world all the time. You can go through a whole thing of clearing your heart and clearing the space and opening up, and then you could have new experiences that are upsetting. And, the thing is, are you going to shut your heart down again in those experiences? That's the habit. We kind of tend to do that. We're like, well, I'm going to take my ball and go home and on you, we're not going to work with you anymore. I mean, I don't mean me as a coach necessarily, but just the person who wounded us, or the situation. Oh, I tried that and this thing happened. I'm never going to go look at that again. And the thing is, I mean, if something is, or I'm never going to try to, speaking of Valentine's Day, I'm never going to try to love anybody again, because, they're just going to hurt me. And the thing is, that's why I've often said that people who always say that strength comes from, being this, and Alex said, that's how I felt. You can open the heart as quickly, you can close it up again, even without being aware of it. Well, sure, because that's the normal mode. That's the normal mode of the way our egos protect ourselves. And when I say ego, I don't mean that in a negative way. This is part of our psyche and part of what we need to deal with the outside world and with people. And in certain situations, you do what you have to do. If you're in a crisis, you may move into a mode that maybe is not a mode you should be in everyday life, but in the situation, you got to do what you got to do, right? I mean, we manage things as we encounter them. But I think what it does is the heart ends up hanging on to them. And so it doesn't want to let go. And it's harder, and it becomes hard because people say, well, if I open my heart, then I'm open to being wounded again. But we're being wounded all the time. And we may wound all the time too, and just not realize that we do it. A lot of the things that go on are unconscious. And in spite of what people say, I mean, yes, I know there's some really terrible people in the world, but I don't think I would suggest that probably the majority of people are not really out to willfully hurt somebody else. Most of the time, if we do hurt somebody or lash out in anger, it's because we feel that that person has betrayed or violated a relationship in some way, and it's almost like a way of trying to say to that person, "You've hurt me," right? But so there's this. So heart opening is a really difficult thing. It is not. We tend to look at it as something. Like, we always think of the heart as being soft. When people talk about the feminine and they say, oh, but oh, that person, they're emotional and they're this and they're that, like they're a weak person, right? For having all of that stuff. Because obviously a strong person is somebody who can stand there and not let anything affect them. And, whatever you mean by physical strength, like emotional strength is, well, this person's a rock and they never feel anything. I'm like, no, actually, that's not good. That is a defense. That says I deal with life by just keeping a wall up all the time. And, and again, it's not that we need to be falling apart and emotional all the time. It's a balancing act, right? We need to keep things in balance. But when we feel the need to be emotional, we should be emotional. How many times do I work with people, and if something comes up and they say, I'm going to, they start to cry. And then they say, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, I'm crying. Why are you? No, don't be sorry that you're crying. This is you, this is part of who you are. And I think when we had this discussion the other day on the Katonia live stream about, how do I want to put it? On machines, on human being as being like machines. So people are saying, oh, but we're made up of the same stuff as machines and our DNA is like programming and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, but it's really the other way around, isn't it? Machines are supposed to be something that's be a facsimile of us or of the stuff that's in the world. It's something that we've created. It's not, we are not like it. It is probably they're trying to make it like us. And when we think of because if we start thinking of ourselves as identified as machines, then the problem is that, machines don't have that capability. Like I said, they don't have that soul. They don't have the capability. They don't have that connection. Even if they try to imitate it, even if they can maybe, to a certain degree successfully imitate a human interaction to a point where maybe you don't know you're having a conversation with a machine. What were they called? The Turing tests. I think Alan Turing, who did the tests to try to, are you talking to a machine or are you talking to a person? Like, how can you tell the difference? But in any case, yeah, I that came up this morning about that kind of imagery, and it occurred to me that, yeah, one thing about that Earth in the 12th house, like that was kind of the thing that came up. And maybe because the person I was thinking of was another person who has Earth, Virgo in the 12th house. And I'm like, maybe it's just kind of, that's the raw material that you have. But because Virgo also has this worrying and perfectionist and detail oriented aspect to it, there's the sense, it almost creates an opposition to it, because it's almost like, no, we need to keep everything neat and tidy and perfect. And we don't want all this dirty stuff getting in the way. And it's like, so how do you break through and how do you engage with that? So I just thought it was interesting that I had a dream about this person saying, yes, I'm the prophetess of the Lu, of what's going. So in other words, a person who's talking about what's going on, who can access that material and tell you what it is and what it's doing in your life. So that was just really interesting. The other piece of news I had to share with people is that now I have gotten the message about my second interview for this program that I want to do in the UK. And so that has been, I think right now it's been, I think as I was talking to you, that the email jumped up saying, yes, you've been scheduled, I think for February 26th is the next one. And Alex said, that's such an interesting take on Earth ruling the 12th. Yeah, and it's not one, Alex, that I would have thought of before. And now that I'm seeing that, I'm like, that maybe there's something to that there, that the person with Earth there is not necessarily somebody who, this could be somebody who tends to be more focused on the practical than on the things that we think of as Piscean, which is what the 12th house is. Somebody who is, as one psychic put it to me once, water and earth sometimes make mud, they can just kind of get you stuck and bogged down. But And Kathleen says, yay. Yeah, but I think it's like where that raw material is. But remember, the 12th house is both what liberates us and what is our self-undoing. And Alex says there's something there. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's so that is always a house. The 12th house is a curious one because, like I said, as it was in the astrology cards in the book that I have, the way that Susan Shepard puts it is she says, it is the place where saints live and madmen, is the way she put it. It can be everything. It can be the place where we can be completely delusional and completely ungrounded and completely not connecting with anything that's real. Okay. And that also made me think too. I was thinking of the Jungian psychiatry case. I always tell my students about this one when I start teaching psychology of myth. And it's from Heinrich Fiers's book called Jungian Psychiatry. And he was a psychiatrist. I feel like Fierce worked like, this was written like in the 60s. So obviously what they dealt with psychiatry then is something, and Suda says, best of luck. It's dealing with psychiatry and stuff like that. What he was saying was that, okay, he had a patient who came in, somebody brought her in for psychotherapy, and she was on the schizoid scale. She was like one of those people, like you see, like if you've ever been in the Penn Station bathroom in New York City, you find these people who will come in and like take feces out of the toilet and start smearing the walls. I mean, it's gross, right? Absolutely. And of course, immediately security comes and has to take those people away and send somebody in to clean. And, it happens like that. But he had a patient like that who would take anything and start smearing it on the walls. Wasn't totally nonverbal, pulled all of her hair out, and just walked around trying to smear things on the walls. And for some reason, he said her family seemed to think psychotherapy was going to help. And he's like, I can't even talk. It's that, how are you going to have talk therapy with somebody who is nonverbal? But when she had come into the clinic, and I guess they had given her whatever medications they were going to give her and so forth, they said she had gotten some jam with like her toast or whatever. And she took it and she made like a face. And they said, and he just said, he suddenly had a thought, like, this is the beginning of psychotherapy. So he said, you know what? I think she's trying to say something through this. Bring her some pen and paints instead, or paints or pencils or whatever you use to draw with. And he said, the woman evidently felt herself to be understood because the first thing she drew was a mandala. It was a circle, but she drew, it looked like a little airplane in the middle. And she wrote under it, plane trying to take off frozen in Arctic waters for a long time. And he said, aha, that's the personality. That's the ego that's trapped. That's what happens in schizophrenic cases. The ego, there's no connection to the ego. There's no connection to the outside. You're completely lost in the unconscious. And your connection to the outside world, that's why it seems so different, because you're not really connecting with the reality that everyone else is connecting with. And so she's saying, the personality is trying to take off, but it was frozen a long time ago. And he said, the day after I said this in front of her, she wrote a completely lucid letter to her family. And they took, of course, that as evidence that this was going to work. And he was shocked by it. He was just like, oh, okay. He says, but then she proceeded to draw a series of other pictures. The next one was of a child sitting on a it was a lotus flower. And her caption was, a child can sit on the petals. Okay. So when you're talking about the child and the child archetype, okay, this is the way in which one can come into new possibility, right? A new beginning, a new birth. And then she drew a picture of a clock that was at 11 o'clock. Now, this was a much older woman, and she was worried that maybe she didn't have enough time left. So there was all of this stuff that was kind of coming out. And her last picture, and there's copies of all these pictures, like there's, black and white images of these pictures in the book, of her drawing an eye, and her caption under it was a fish, an eye. Okay. Now, if you know things about archetypal symbolism, the fish, we see the fish like a lot of times, like in Christianity, that becomes the symbol of Jesus, right? There was the piscis, the fish. And you'll see something, speaking of Glastonbury, actually, then you go to the chalice well, there's the well cover, and it's got like these two interlocking circles, and it's got what they call a vescia piscis, okay? And that is called the vessel of the fish. So if you put two interlocking circles together, you'll notice that at one place, there'll be kind of that oval-shaped little intersection on one side, and it looks like a fish. So they call it the vessel of the fish. And that's the point of integration, the vescia piscis. It's where the opposites or the two different things are integrated into each other. So the fish ends up representing, Jung would have called it the higher self, or some people would call it the Christ consciousness, or some people, I don't necessarily like any of those kind of terms for it. I just think that's the true inner voice. That's the true soul. That's the true spirit. It's that intersection of everything. The Weskia piscis. So, but it also not only looks like a fish, it also looks like an eye. It's the eye that really sees things for what they are. And that is so it's a fish, an eye. And typically, so he said this to him was a sign as a Jungian therapist that she was, for all intents and purposes, cured. And this woman went, I guess because her hair was pulled out, she got a wig, she got her teeth fixed because her teeth were a mess. She spoke 2 languages. I think she spoke English and German. And after that, she was out of the clinic, totally normal, and traveled the world and connected with people and had experiences and lived the rest of her life happily. Or happily enough, as any of us would. So yeah, it's interesting how how these symbols can connect us. But it made me think of, with the fish, we're thinking of Pisces now, right? You're thinking of that energy there, that soul energy, because it is connected to the mind too, because the mind can free us. We can be awake and aware of things, right? But it can also be our undoing, because we can sit here and we can get stuck in the mind, and make little prisons for ourselves, because we have a wonderful thing happen and we go, oh yeah, but this could happen and this can happen. I don't have this and I don't have that. And then we go and we go on and on and on until we've made a decision that this wonderful thing is never going to work out and be anything. So might as well get depressed about it now, right? We do that kind of stuff all the time. And sort of saying super interesting here. Yeah, it's interesting. But to me, having like a Virgo 12th house, right. So there's all the raw material there. But one just needs to be careful. And Alex says, haha, that's so funny. My son, Mercury Mars, lives in the 12th. At times I'm that woman. Well, let me tell you something, Alex. But yes, your Mars, we were talking about our Mars. And that's like relatable. The story of a woman on some level. Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So having a 12th house sun, right. I mean, that also indicates somebody prefers to kind of be in the background. Like I don't need everybody to be looking at me, right? Like the 12th house is also what we keep hidden, what's kind of not obvious to people. And even with Mercury, it's like, it's kind of, I always feel like Mercury provides a way of digging through the 12th house, right? It's a way of researching, of finding out, like finding things out almost on a more intellectual level about the soul. Like it allows you to do that. It's funny, I was just saying though, I have Venus Mars conjunct in the 12th house. Okay. So I think it's very funny when people speaking of love, make amorous comments and things. I'm like, I have a 12th house Venus. I haven't a clue as to how to talk to anybody in that way. I am not a natural flirt. Okay. That's all hidden away. Mars is also hidden away, and it's conjunct Venus. So there tends to be, there could be strong passions there, but they tend to stay hidden. And Saturn is there for me. And Saturn in the 12th house can put a block where people are not able to see, because that's what people told me for years. You've got this block, which I think we finally unblocked that block. But also Saturn in the 12th house can be a liberator. It can be a liberator, or it can do the opposite as well. So yeah, when you have a lot of action in the 12th, it means there's a lot of under the surface stuff that you're uncovering. It's like your soul is out of an archaeologist. You're uncovering a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's relatable. And if we had a total disconnect from all of that, I almost feel like a Mercury in the 12th would probably prevent that. I would think, I could be wrong, but I would think it might prevent that kind of a breakdown or that kind of experience. But nonetheless, there's this idea of being able to be able to express the soul. So anyway, interesting stuff. Oh, and I was starting to say that I got my second interview. So yeah, we will see where that goes. I will let everybody know. I'm going to pull some cards for us now. And today I'm going to use the Spirit Within Tarot. I do have the Osho Zen, but I do need to finish at 8:15 today. So, wow. There's a bunch of cards that have come out here. This may be, I'm trying to decide if this is actually, I think this is actually too many. I want to just do like three or four. And Alex is saying so interesting. Yeah, but yeah, it's just interesting. And this is why I always tell people, pay attention to your dreams, because your dreams could open up the things that maybe you're having trouble figuring out in negotiating. Your dreams always, dreams may be providing the answer. And dream space, and congratulations, wishing you good things for the interview. Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate that. Yes, I am, I'm feeling actually very hopeful. And the message I got from Azrael this morning, him and my other guides had only one message. They're like, you are in a good, clear space right now. Don't, what did he call it? How did he say it? Ol Uran Dodds Angelard Manin. Okay, those are the Enochian words, which basically means I see that I can see those vexing thoughts in your mind. And basically it was like, don't let those vexing thoughts in your mind come in and do exactly what I just said, like saying, because I have a very good feeling about it. And it's like, go with the feeling. Don't go with the, oh, but how am I going to figure this and that? Am I going to have to do this? Because then you will kind of like bog yourself down in that and drain yourself. They're like, no, stay in the space that you're in. That's the space you want to be in. It reminds me of when I was taking art classes. I was learning watercolor. And Liana, who was my teacher, it was like, I was doing kind of like a scene. I was doing pumpkins, actually. It was like an autumnal kind of scene. And she came over and looked at my work and she said, those pumpkins are perfect. Like, you do not put another brush stroke near those damn pumpkins. Like, leave them there because they are right exactly as they are. It's that kind of a thing. That's what it kind of reminds me of a little bit. Anyway, here's our cards for today. 10 of Pentacles is where we're starting. Okay, now 10 of Pentacles is interesting because 10 of Pentacles is not only, yeah, we were talking about the earth, about security. Remember, 12th house stuff can also be about ancestral stuff in our DNA that we are working through. I feel like 10 of Pentacles in this case not only has that earthiness, like working through that stuff, but I also feel like there's a family connection there too. Issues that we have, particularly with the father, because this I associate with the 10th house. We always talk about the 4th house as the house of the mother, but we don't realize that the 10th house is the house of the father, okay? And so I feel like there's almost, and to me, okay, thinking about the ISFM, and I'll make my quick plug for the ISFM, Institute for the Study of Feminine Myth, which, again, I'm talking more about that over on Katonia. I should probably advertise a little over here too, that we are talking about masculine and feminine integration. And so that may be part of it. So what kind of lays in there? I feel like a lot of people, and interesting, we're talking about this on Valentine's Day, right? That I think for a lot of people, it is relationships. It is those kinds of ways in which, and like I said, for men, it may be their engagement with the feminine. For women, it may be engagement with the masculine. And the ways in which we, that a lot of our blocks may come from the way that we have engaged with whatever either our opposite is. And again, for people who are more gender fluid or trans, there's still going to be some aspect of them that's going to identify a little bit more psychologically with one side or the other. So whatever aspect of the masculine and feminine, but I feel like this has a lot to do with the masculine. Okay. And yeah, we have 4 of Swords. So this is about healing the masculine, right? 4 of Swords is about how we heal things. So yeah, I feel like that was another word I got this morning, page, which is rest, having a rest. As you see, this person is resting. Okay. There's a message here around kind of being still, resting, being where you are, recognizing that we're at the beginning of a cycle. Okay. And we are going through this space. We are cleaning things up. We are clearing things up. And I think if we're talking about, okay, collectively, if we're talking about a stage where patriarchy seems to be crumbling, then the question becomes, as I asked the other day in my promo for the ISFM over on the other on the Katonia channel, was I said, when that aspect of things is crumbling, we're talking about a toxic idea of masculinity that goes away. How do we connect with the positive ideas of masculinity? And masculinity, we don't just mean men. We mean there's masculine and feminine sides to all of us. So, so how do we deal with that in a society where really in the attempt to be very strong, it ends up becoming very weak? So how do you heal that? How do we heal that in ourselves? I mean, men or women, or men, women, people consider themselves gender fluid, whatever. How do you heal that? How do you heal that aspect of things? So now we have the Ace of Cups. Okay. So the Ace of Cups is this new beginning, right? This is a new beginning. The way through is through the heart. And I think that's part of what I was being told this morning too. The way through is the heart. You want to go with what the heart says. The rational mind has a purpose and it has a use, but we we basically have decided that what we see with our eyes and what we think in our head is the only standard for truth. We don't pay attention to the heart. The heart makes us feel a certain way, and we go, "Oh, I can't be bothered with all those emotions." I'm going to be a person who who avoids all of that, right? No, and also remember, as I was just saying about beginnings, that was another word I got this morning, kroadzi, which is one of the words for beginning in the angelic language. Yeah, this is a beginning. Aces are, you're making a start. So when you're starting out, I mean, if you've just come out of this space, think about it. If you've been in the hospital for something, okay, if you had a surgery or some situation where you had to be bedbound for a period of time, and then it's like, oh, okay, now you're better and you're going to be discharged, right? So now the first time you go out into the world, you're not just out there running like you were before. Like, you're in this space where you're still quite vulnerable, and your healing is probably going to continue in another space, right? So yeah, it's reminding us that we're at the beginning, and we need to take care of that. We might need moments where we need to retreat. We might need moments of this reflection or going through things. And we might need to just take time to take care of ourselves. And yeah, and our outcome card, and interestingly, okay, remember I was talking about numerology the other day. 2025 is the number 9. It's the year of the Hermit. And we have the Hermit here. Okay, so in this new space, the Hermit may indicate if the Four of Swords flanks the heart space, right? With the Hermit. These are both cards of backing off, taking time out, taking time to consider things, taking time to integrate things. And the fact that we're starting with the 10 of Pentacles, it's not only what we think of in terms of abundance and what we think of in terms of security, but a lot of this is built around what happens with family, and particularly things around the masculine. I think this is something that and even a lot of men don't necessarily, men are not conscious of it because they're not taught to be conscious of it. It's that kind of a thing. So this is interesting. There seems to be this idea of healing the masculine. We've moved, if we think of it as Capricorn energy, okay? This is about the good use of Capricorn. How do we integrate this? How do we, how is this? This is something that's kind of coming into being. And how do we open our hearts and not deal with this kind of energy in its more toxic form, or in the form that has traumatized us in some way? So anyway, interesting little reading here. But definitely there seems to be a lot saying, be in the moment. If you're certainly, especially if you're feeling like you're having a good or a clear moment, like just stay in the feeling. Don't try to force the feeling, but stay in the realm of feeling, and allow yourself to see what you feel about things and what your reflections are about things. I always encourage people to journal and to do things like that. I realize people don't always have time for that. People can even just, record something if they have a thought they want to think about or talk about, or they express themselves in other ways. And also with the ISFM, that's why I have people do a project, because I'm like, this is an opportunity for you to express something that is connected to the work, the things that we're trying to reflect on and work through in the ISFM courses. So yeah, so that's me for today. I'm going to probably try to end, it's about 8:13 here. So I'll probably be winding my way out. I guess we'll do one more quick card. We'll do the, I have the essential oil cards here. So let's just pull one as a kind of final thought. And then I will wish all of you a happy Valentine's Day / Lupercalia and Good Friday. Very good advice. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Suda. Yeah, it's, okay. All right, 3 came out. Let's try to go through these quickly. First one is massage oil, okay? And the key word is ease. Trigger statement is, I have to make this work. The true statement is, I am at ease with life. You need to ease your grip on life so it can lead the way. There is an outcome brighter than you can imagine. Okay, so that's another thing about the masculine, the tendency to need to control something, Thanks, have a great day. Sure. Then we've got the arrow. Divination is the key word. The trigger statement is, I am so drained. The true statement is, I am shielded. You're finding balance as you see what resonates and what does not. With clear sight, you are safe and protected. Okay? And the third one is celery seed. That is cleanse. The trigger statement is, there is no answer. The true statement is, I am the answer. The aligned outcome for you is simple, but not necessarily easy. Commit your goals to heart each day and allow every single action, and every single action will take you closer to them. So very interesting and good advice. Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, everybody who joined me today. I really appreciate you listening, taking the time. I hope you all have, like I said, a great Friday, great Valentine's Day, Lupercalia, etc.